giving me this opportunity to talk on a very important, often not spoken topic, hearing loss in diabetes. So Christopher Murray is one great person who always talks about the global burden of disease, which we don't often talk much. So what is global burden of diseases? Like to look into some of these minor ailments, which we may look minor, but it may be looking a big burden for the patient. Say, let us presume an example, an individual lives till the age of 70 years. And at the age of 60, he dies. The years that he lost because of this ailment is 10 years. When he gets an ailment at the age of 50 years and rest of 20 years, he lives with this disability. So 20 years he lives with this disability, but we don't quantify this morbidity with that mortality. So both the things looks distinct. So it doesn't correspond. So he tried to look both these parameters of morbidity and mortality into a single factor and derived this concept called as disability adjusted life in years. So if you see for hearing loss, the disability adjusted life in years for a person who has developed a mild hearing loss or a moderate hearing loss compared to a person with a severe hearing loss where the disability adjusted life in year is going to be minimal. Whereas if it is moderate, he loses about 2 years of his productive life. It is equivalent to his 2 years of productive life in with respect to the mortality. So there can be other illnesses in the form of his low back pain, or he may have a migraine, all these things. So we have to compound all these things. So one thing that we want to tell here is, because of the hearing disability, the disability adjusted in life in years is equivalent to 1.5 to 2 years. Now, why do we want to talk about hearing loss in diabetes? So if you see international textbook of diabetes, there is not even a single word where we can find like hearing loss in diabetes is mentioned over there. This is the index which I have copied. So why do we want to talk about it? All came, there were some small studies which looked into hearing loss and diabetes, but this article which got published in Annals of Internal Medicine in the year 2019 in US, they looked into the population from Nance group. So NANS are something like similar to our Framingham heart study, like almost similar to that, when Framingham heart study looked into various risk factors which are affecting the heart. This study group looked into the nutritional factors of individuals. So it's such a huge study, huge information we have developed. We can just go through and see what NANS has contributed towards the various risk factors and various nutritional supplements that we consume. Amazing amount of publication done by this group. So in those group, in the particular year 2004, they picked up about 10,000 individuals, and of them like 5,000 people, 5,200 and odd, they subjected to an audiogram. They just subjected to an audiogram and nothing more. So of these people, they are all non-institutionalized patients. Basically, it means they are non-military patients, because military patients, because of their work environment and industrial environment, may have some hearing loss. So they excluded all those people. And in these people, when the audiogram was done, then they looked into whether they are diabetic or not diabetes. So after doing the audiogram only, they did that, of which like 2,500 were diabetic, and surprisingly 2,500 were non-diabetic. We don't see that rationalization once the subject group is taken, but that is how the study happened. So, and at the end of the study, done for about 4 years, they surprisingly found that in diabetics, there was about, in general, like 10 decibel loss was seen compared to non-diabetic. So across the age group, whether it is 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, there was about 10 decibel loss in the hearing loss, which was happening in people with diabetes compared to non-diabetic. So it became very clear, and after which there are many meta-analysis, type 1 subgroup analysis, type 1 meta-analysis, and there are small studies, various studies. I don't want to illustrate all those data. So NANS is one study which showed very clearly diabetics is associated with at least 10 decibels hearing loss across the age group. So, but why does this can cause hearing loss? Why should diabetes can cause a hearing loss? It could be because of diabetic angiopathy, which is a product of intimal glycoprotein with endothelial damage. Typically, we see in microvascular disease in the form of fundus, or objectively, we can see in proteinuria, or when there is a neuropathy, or in the fundus. But numerous studies, especially almost all these studies are postmortem studies, have demonstrated diabetic changes to the stria vascularis, basilar membrane, and hair cells of the cochlea. So these are all post-mortem studies. We are not able to demonstrate because the stria vascularis is unique to the inner ear because of its rich microvascular, something similar to the fundus. In spite of that, which is we are not able to demonstrate these changes in stria vascularis because the entire apparatus, stria vascularis with cochlea and organ of Cartay and hair cells, everything is being encapsulated by the bone. So for this simple reason, that we are not able to demonstrate what microvascular changes are happening in the stria vascularis. So the editorial of Annals of Internal Medicine, which looked into, said we don't have the cochlear equivalent of fundoscopic examination. So we have a very limited ability to confirm the enticing hypothesis of impaired microcirculation of the ear. So we are not able to demonstrate that it is because of the microangiopathy. Could it be because of mitochondrial damage? Because there are some defects which run in the family. So by increased mitochondrial derived reactive oxygen species can it mediate it. So particularly maternal inherited diabetes of the deafness results from genetic substitution of mitochondrial tRNA, or Wolfram syndrome, where we all know it is characterized by the triad of diabetes, optic atrophy, and sensory neuronal hearing loss. So could it be something like mediated, something which happens in this disease to all these defects? But it is not so, because the prevalence of this disease is very, very low, something around 1 in 1 lakh, but the incidence that we see in clinical practice is much more higher than that. So that rules out it cannot be due to mitochondrial damages. Could it be because of neuropathy? Then the third thing comes because of reductions in the dendritic branches or the oxidative stress production from the because of the free radicals which are getting produced from the oxidative stress. Could it be because of all these factors? So these changes are associated with the degradation of the vasa vasorum of the blood vessels surrounding the vestibulocochlear nerve. So we have to study the vestibulocochlear nerve, which was much more easier or objectively we can do in the form of auditory brainstem response. So what is auditory brainstem response is you are assessing the retrocochlear neural pathway, where you put two headsets over the patient and give an auditory impulse and see how much amount of responses it are evoked in the brain. This is typically done in pediatric age group for the reason that we want to rule out any congenital hearing loss in them to evoke the response. The patients are even done under, this test can be done under whole anesthesia also. So just to elicit the response of the electrophysiological signals which are generated in the brain secondary to the signals which are getting produced. So this also produced this auditory brain response. This in this particularly this Portland Veterans Affairs Medical Center. I don't know. They studied people with the diabetics of about 15 years duration compared with a non-diabetic. So in this study, prospectively they studied for 4 years and they did this auditory brain response, and it showed in particular frequencies they were associated with latencies which are peculiar to neuropathy or absent. Every year it was progressively getting lost in diabetic than in non-diabetic. So which is amazing to show that it could be because of neuropathic changes. So how do we help our patients? Typically you ask for an audiogram. I'll just take 2 minutes to explain how to interpret an audiogram. So you ask for a pure tone audiometry where the decibels are getting matched against the frequencies. So what you see over the vertical axis is the decibels, the sound intensity at which it is lost, but that is not the alone important. We have to see match it against the frequency. So when we see the auditory hearing loss based on the decibels, like less than 25, it can be normal, 25 to 40, it can be mild, moderate, or severe. So this is the intensity of the sound that matters. But what is more important is not the intensity alone. What is important is for which frequency they are getting lost. Say it could be a elephant's trumpet, the low frequency sound. So if you see an elephant trumpet, it is a very such high sound. If you see earthquake, it is such a high sound. Or if you see the dog barking or the lawn mowers or even the sound of the thunder, it is a high sound, but it is a low frequency sound. Typically vowels like A, E, I, O, U are all low frequency sound. The high frequency sounds like a bird's chirping or a child's sequel or a woman voice. Somebody may be selectively saying that he's not hearing to his ladies' voices. So it is not because of that. There is a loss of just a high frequency loss happening to them. So there can be a low frequency loss or a high frequency loss. So if you see in the audiogram in this chart, there is a loss of about 60 decibels, which corresponds to only 6,000 frequency. 6,000 frequency is the one which we see typically in noise-induced hearing loss because of exposure to various noises or using too much of headphones or working in a workplace where the sound is higher. This is the typical graph that we see in a noise-induced hearing loss. About 60 decibels is lost at about 6,000 frequency. So, but other frequencies are all same. So this is something which we need to understand. And also we should understand the loss that happens in diabetic is sensory neural hearing loss. So what is sensory neuronal hearing loss? Sensory neuronal hearing loss can be assessed by whether it is a bone conduction or an air conduction. So if the bone conduction is better than air conduction, what does it mean? That the sounds waves which are coming into the ear are not able to be transmitted inside the ear. So that is the reason there is a bone conduction which is happening better than the air conduction. So it means that there is a problem in the external ear where the air conduction is not felt. So you have to remove the cerumen or it could be due to the perforation which is happening in the eardrum, which can be causing. So bone conduction, if there is a gap between bone conduction and air conduction, always we should note that it could be because of some external ear functions, and these are something which we don't see frequently, but they can be surgically corrected, and they are correctable causes. There can be correctable causes of hearing loss. 95% of the defects we will be seeing only like this, where the progressively, as the frequency goes increasing around 2000 to 8000, we see a hearing loss over here. So quickly, 1 minute. A self-reported hearing loss or taking the history from the patient is not going to be specific. So this study very clearly showed that having a hearing loss, self-reporting hearing loss, is not going to be useful. So don't ask the patient or the attenders whether he has a hearing loss or not in your diabetic patient, because it is not going to help them. Rather, what is important is you can just do a whisper voice test, which is the most important test. If at all a carry home point can be taken from entire presentation, we have to know how to do a whisper voice test for our patients. Just stand behind the patients 2 feet away, 60 centimeters away, ask the patient to close one ear and whisper 3 syllables. It could include 2 alphabets and 1 number, or 2 numbers with 1 alphabet. It should be told in a very, very soft way, standing just behind the patient. And after exhalation, after you exhaling the air, it has to be told. If the patient is able to hear, then it means that it is very good. So this particular test, whisper voice test, has got almost about 90% sensitivity and 90% specificity, both for pediatrics as well as adults, both for sensory neuronal hearing loss as well as adult conductive hearing loss. So I just conclude the carry home points are disability adjusted life in ears with respect to hearing loss is much severe than what we think. Diabetes and hearing loss, as we saw in the article which got published in Annals of Internal Medicine, it has got very, very specific correlation. The mechanism is probably neuropathic. We should understand how does our Puritan audiometry help, and simple whisper test is all that it is needed when we want to screen in our patients every day. With this, I conclude, and I thank the opportunity for this opportunity.
Now we'll have 5 minutes for the previous 3 topics. Any questions from previous 3 topics?
Can I start the discussion? Yeah. To Dr. Sriram Mahadevan, sir, we don't talk about andropause and bone loss. We always talk about menopause and bone loss. Isn't it equally important, sir? So you muted.
The andropause, the age is very varying, anywhere from 50, 55 years till 70, 75 years. And after the age of 75, the age-related bone loss, which we called the primary osteoporosis, superimposes on the andropause-related osteoporosis. That's why, and the longevity after that, and those adjustments also have to come. But menopause, as you know, happens anywhere between 45 to 55. The longevity, the age span, lifespan after menopause is almost 30, 40 years as of today. So that's why, and that's why it carries. This is simple answer. But your point is very well taken. Even though we don't use the word andropause, the secondary osteoporosis, any young male less than 60, 65 years, or probably even up to 70, I can include. That is why the US task force recommends that you don't do bone density routinely in men before the age of 70. But if you suspect hypogonadism for some reason in a male, please address bone health. One of the important reasons, as you know, many of the fertility patients, many of them come to us for treatment, like Klinefelter syndrome or hypogonadotropic hypogonadism or pituitary diseases. They all cause hypogonadism. If not appropriately replaced, the chances of osteoporosis is much higher. So though we don't call it andropause in them, hypogonadism as a secondary osteoporosis is very important.
I have a question for Dr. Ramkumar. Sir, we talked about diabetes and the gingival health, but the inability to properly chew is going to make him select those dishes which are easy to swallow, you know, like ganji and things like that. That is going to also increase his diabetic, uncontrolled diabetes. So I think it is not only, you know, scientific in its nature, but also it's a practical problem that we are not talking about. So we need to start asking about it to everybody in reality.
Yeah, you're right, sir. Valid point.
Can I have a question?
Yes.
Dr. Gauri, excellent talk, and you saved us about 8-9 minutes also. It's a very brief but very effective talk. What I would like to ask a question to you is that you showed that the hearing loss is such a important aspect. Do you have any treatment options to improve that hearing or prevention of hearing loss?
So prevention of the hearing loss, we should, once the patients are diagnosed with a hearing loss, we should make sure that their diabetic control is good. They don't progress to neuropathy. There is some correlation with the HDL, and they are not working in a noise exposure, and we don't give any ototoxic drugs. So these are the things that we can do as a diabetologist or a physician. But apart from that, like treatment, like obviously once we diagnose, if the patient has got a obvious mild to moderate hearing loss for that particular frequency, we have to refer to an ENT friend, and hearing aid can be offered where the specialist role comes into, sir. We can diagnose, but we have to involve our ENT friend.
Dr. Kannan asked a question for which Dr. Sriram Mahadevan, somatic motor neuropathy and its impact on osteopenia. You've already answered, sir, but a lot of people may not be looking at this thing.
Neuropathy, in addition to fall risk, which is very easy to understand, neuropathy will maintain the position sense, joint position sense, there is a neural stimulus always to the bone also, and the biomechanical sensing, which happens when you walk, etc., or through these nerve, and that's how the osteocytes pick it up. So there is neural control of bone health is well understood. And the extreme example of that is Charcot's disease, where the vascular component is normal, but the patient has severe neuropathy, which leads to totally distorted foot. You would have seen those patients. So I think from those things, we gain knowledge that neuropathy, not just fall, but specifically bone health. I wanted to ask Gauri one small question here. He said that whisper test was very appealing in the clinic. What should be the ambient noise? It should be a very silent room, I suppose. In an audio-proof room, maybe that is possible, no? In a clinic, and that too in a typical GH kind of clinic and all, whisper test is not possible.
Sir, they say it can be done in any clinical clinic. Only thing, it should be silent enough. But,
one simple clinical addition to that is you can keep a normal person and talk, and if he hears and if this fellow doesn't hear, maybe that can be a comparison. Maybe that's a simple thing we do, no?
But the whisper test is not meant for that, sir. Even when we went for army, that is how they assessed. So army, they are very particular about you should not have any hearing loss. So even in such a big organization, they didn't ask for audiometry on evaluation. They did just a whisper test. So
one more suggestion. I mean, sorry, I'm taking one more. The stethoscope can be put to the patient's ears, and you tap it slightly, you can have some way of objectively tapping it, and that could be also considered. These are all screening tests for our clinic purpose. That's right.
Sir. We can ask the patient to close his own tragus and keep doing a round over there, sir. That is how it is just done. Actually, we should ask him to close the other ear, and he should close his tragus, and he should be doing a round sort of thing.